Since 2003, this is the Sports Source, East Tennessee's #1 sports talk show.
Presented by Pipe Wrench, and by Junk Be Gone, and by the Garza Law Firm.
With your host, John Pennington. The Sports Source starts now.
Really, we mean it. It's starting now. Good Sunday morning. Welcome into the Junk Be Gone studios for the Sports Source. Got a packed show for you today. Tennessee baseball. They got a season-defining doubleheader that's coming up this afternoon after yesterday's game was suspended due to rain, so we'll start there. We've also got a little bit of basketball news. We've got some football to discuss. Tennessee among the top favorites for the national title if you look at some of these gambling sites, so we'll cover that. We'll talk about the blue chip ratio. Does Tennessee have enough talent, according to one formula, to win a national title? And we'll also look, I had an interesting conversation with a buddy of mine this week who said, well, after all this expansion, what is an SEC school? So I did a little math, and what do all these schools have in common? We found 8 traits that matter, and we'll take a look at where Tennessee, how it relates to its sister institutions in the SEC. Kind of interesting, if you're a geek like me. Hope you are. Let's go ahead and get started with today's show. First segment brought to you by our friends at the Garza Law Firm. Folks, if you find yourself in need of an attorney, that can be a very scary time. Who do you trust? Who do you turn to? My suggestion? Turn to Marcos Garza and the Garza Law Firm. His team have years and years and years of a great track record right here in East Tennessee. Here in East Tennessee, your neighbors. Remember the website, garzalaw.com. If you ever need an attorney, that's where you need to start, the Garza Law Firm. All right, let's welcome in today's panelists. You can read where they are and what they do at the bottom of the screen. We have Jimmy Himes right there. We have Vince Farrar right here. Bob Hodge, Chuck Cavaleras, thank you one and all. I appreciate it, gentlemen. As I mentioned at the top, and as you know by now, Tennessee was trailing 4-0 in the 5th inning yesterday in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. They were then rain suspended. It was rained down, and they suspended the game, so that starts at noon today. They'll pick the game up right there. And then after that game, they'll play game 2. In case you're wondering, we'll go ahead and show you this. This is how things stand. You can't read it, but I'll tell you what it says. Alabama is trailing Wake Forest 1-0 in their series, their super regional. Florida's already through to the World Series. They took 2 games straight from South Carolina. Kentucky lost 14-0 to LSU last night, so LSU leads that that super regional 1-0. Virginia and Duke tied 1-1, so they've got the game for Omaha today. Texas up 1-0 over Stanford. TCU beat Indiana State in 2 straight, so TCU's already into the World Series. Oregon and Oral Roberts are tied at 1. Southern Miss and Tennessee haven't gotten a full game in yet, so they're behind the rest of them. Everybody's going to be watching them. Vince, let's start. Who does this benefit? Does it benefit anyone?
Well, I think probably you'd have to say it benefits Tennessee because they're having a tough time with Southern Miss starter Billy Oldham yesterday. And he's not their #1, but he looked fantastic. Tennessee had a tough time with that changeup, fastball, keeping the Tennessee hitters off balance. And I think Tony Vitello kind of alluded to it a little bit in the in-game interview, that they were a little bit anxious. Look, sometimes those things give you a mental reset and you can come back. Now, there's been some weather delays that Tennessee's played in this year that they haven't come back any better or different. But, hey, the stakes are different. Maybe the mindset is a little bit different. And, look, hey, if he probably isn't going to come back. Typically starters that have that delay, they don't come back. So I think it is a plus because Tennessee has plenty of arms that they can go to try to finish out that game, and maybe they have a different mental mindset. So I would lean towards Tennessee being the favorite for game 1. Game 2, you're facing their ace in Tanner Hall, who's the pitcher of the year in the Sun Belt. And, look, Tennessee brings Chase Dolander, so they got a great arm too. So it'll be interesting to see if there's any momentum into if you finish game 1 because you're playing game 2 right after that, if that carries in.
Yeah, and down 4-0, it's like if you do turn it around, you've got to make up some stuff right there too. Right. I mean, it's not like you're starting fresh at aught. So you've got to make up ground. Jimmy, your thoughts on
I think it benefits Southern Miss because I think they're going to come in with their ace to finish the game today. And if you take a 1-0 lead, you got to make up 4 runs, right? In less than 5 innings. You bring in the ace, he closes it out, you're down 1-0, pressure's on you. So I think it benefits Southern Miss Because I think it's going to be hard for Tennessee to win game one. And most teams that win game one go on to win a series.
What is that? I saw the number yesterday and I didn't. It's like 65, 70%.
80%. It's actually
79,
79%.
yeah.
Game one winners go on to go to the College World Series.
Do you believe this changes? Do you think there's a benefit for this rainout, or is that just
I think
gobbledygook?
I think there's a benefit if they do what Jimmy does. If they bring their ace and win game one, then you don't have him for game two. I would save him for game two and think my guys are good enough to run out a 4-0 lead. You know, what was it? 2 outs and 2 strikes?
1 out, 1 on, runner first.
Oh, it was 1 out, 1 on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Zane Denton hit for Tennessee.
You know, so the situation, I don't know. It's interesting if they did bring out the race, though, because would that give you a crack in the other 2 games if they did and used him up?
I would disagree with that approach, because then you're using him half game with a lead that you should be able to hold.
That's what I was thinking.
Versus having him take you to the finish line to go to Omaha if you get that first.
I think the whole idea of not starting him in game one is that if you can win that, you can bring him out there in game two, right?
Yeah.
He had pitched 120 pitches in the Auburn regional. Well, I mean, what was it? 120, 100? What, it was a whole lot.
Yeah.
It was like 120 and then 30. So they held him out with the hopes of being able to win game one and then to bring him out and take game two.
I'd pitch him to finish game one, and then I'd start him in game two.
Yeah, but it could be a 55 minutes in between. That's a long time for a pitcher
throwing
to
in the
stop.
bullpen.
And if he throws 90 pitches to get out in game one, no. But if he can get out of there in 50 pitches, I'm bringing him back.
Jimmy wants wins. He doesn't care about these kids' arms. Shoot 'em, spit 'em out. Hey, Andrew Lindsay, speaking of arms, he didn't have it yesterday. Didn't look good.
No, just not quite as sharp as we've seen him. Tennessee had won in his last 6 starts, even if he didn't get the decision. But look, Southern Miss looked dialed in on what they were getting from him, and we'll see. Maybe they're a little bit off this time with whoever Tennessee brings out there. There's a lot of options they can go with, but Lindsey wasn't quite as sharp this time.
But it didn't seem like he was getting a good grip on the ball. Did y'all notice that? 35 pitches. I mean, he kept trying to get his fingers moist to get a better grip.
I mean, it was hot out there. They haven't really dealt with that.
there was something going on. 35 pitches is a lot in one inning.
In the first, yeah.
All right, very good. We'll see what happens today at noon. So if some of you go flipping, I'll understand. Although I will say, and I have to say thank you to this, we've seen this before with noon baseball starts, noon basketball starts. Many times you guys just stay right with us and then go over, so I appreciate that. Let me tell you what's coming up the rest of this show today. Well, right off the top, I've changed something. So that Rubes rules change, we're not going to talk about that. That's out. We're going to dump that. But we are going to talk about Olivier Nkamhoua going to Michigan. We're going to talk about Tennessee title odds for the national championship, the blue chip ratio, where they stand in that. What is an SEC school? And then a lot of talk about the Big Ten and their travel this week. Have you looked at some of the road trips that are going to be coming to Tennessee when the SEC gets Texas and Oklahoma? We'll show you some road trips and what that means for traveling fans across this conference moving forward. But when we come back, the NCAA chose to send the Vols to Southern Miss, and that had everybody upset here, just as it would have been reversed if they'd sent Southern Miss here. You'd have had folks down there angry. The question is, can't the NCAA figure out a kind of simpler way to handle all their tournaments and postseason stuff, their playoffs? We'll discuss that next. Come on back on the Sports Source.